So in the previous class, we were discussing about Taguchi's robust design, and we have seen that Taguchi's robust design has the least sensitivity to the environmental factors. And we are explaining an example, but we haven't completed that example part. So today we are going to complete this example part, and additionally, we will also look into uh, the 7 quality control tools uh, of quality management that we will also discuss. So here you can see that in this particular example we were discussing in the previous class that after taking all the responses we have got these average values. Okay, y bar, these are the average values, or the, and we have also seen that these are the signal to noise ratio. And as per the problem statement, our objective is to maximize the response variable or the dependent variable pool of force. So automatically, in regarding keeping keeping uh, the objective in our mind, so we can understand that y in terms of the average value, the fifth one is the highest value. So this particular combination will actually maximize the response. And also in terms of signal to noise ratio, the same, the fifth run or the fifth observation will give you the maximum signal to noise ratio. Okay. But we have also told that it's not necessarily that always the average, it will be the same. That means the best thing that you will find in terms of the y bar or the average value, the same thing or the same observation you will also find for the signal to noise ratio. It may not be the case. Here both are observed for the fifth run, but it may not be the same. And the drawback of this particular process is that in this y bar is that y actually this usually the average values are not considered, because in case of the average values, it might happen that some particular observation that will give you the highest mean value. Okay, for example, here the fifth observation gives you the highest mean value, but it doesn't guarantee that the fifth observation, that means using this particular setting, the for this particular setting you will also have least amount of variation. There is no such guarantee. Suppose you have, for the first observation you have got these data, so you can easily calculate the variance. For the second observation you have got these data, so you can calculate the variance for these rows. So similarly you can calculate the variances for all the nine runs or the 9 observations, but it does not ensure that the best or the highest observed value that you are observing for that, for which particular run, the same thing, or the, I mean, the least variance you will also observe for that particular observation. It, there is no guarantee that fifth observation here will provide you the least variance. Okay, maybe some other observation will provide you the least variance. So that's why signal to noise ratio is actually considered, because in case of signal to noise ratio we choose, we can maximum the output level that we can choose, whereas we also minimize the signal to noise ratio, because I have told you uh, that here the signal means target value and noise means scatter around target value. Performance measure is when maximized and variation is minimized. So loss is minimized. So signal to noise ratio may be a good alternative. Now take a look at these graphs. Okay, here in these graphs, all the factors, that means the independent variables, they are considered that for their best level, which is their best level to maximize the signal to noise ratio, that has been considered individually. For example, you can see that along the x-axis here, the low, medium and high, that means the levels are considered, and along y-axis the signal to noise ratio is considered. So you can see that for factor A, highest signal to noise ratio is observed when you will set factor A at medium level. Okay. Similarly, for in case of factor B, the same thing will happen. Okay. For factor C, it is same for the medium value. But for factor D, you can see that you will get the highest signal to noise ratio when you will set factor D at low level. Okay, because here this is the highest point as compared to this and this. So this is one uh, uh, thing we can understand in terms of the the graphical sense. Now best settings to maximize pull off force are A level 2, B level 2, C level 3 and D level 1. So 2, 2, 3, 1, as I said earlier, the fifth run. Okay. And for full set of data, base levels of each control factors are level A level 2, B level 2, C level 2 and D level 1. Okay. So this is what you can observe in this diagram. Okay. So what will be how to set the values properly, that you can easily understand from this particular example. Okay, that to maximize pull of force, that fifth run, this setup is required. Okay, and additionally, uh, during the time of conducting the design of experiments, be it full factorial design or fractional factorial design or even Taguchi's robust design, you will find that a uh, lot of things you will find that when you will go through the result part, lot of things like this kind of things you will find. Okay, so in this you will find a regression equation, you will find the R squared, you will find the ANOVA table and the significance level, which particular variable is significant or which particular variable is not significant, that you will also find, and many such kinds of things you will find. Okay, so how to understand or how to interpret these things, that I will explain in a separate video. I will make a separate video for that and I will upload it on the YouTube, and I will share you the link so that you can, even if you do not have in-depth understanding about statistics, how can you interpret all these results. Okay, so I will discuss, and also the null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis in ANOVA, that I will also describe. So now come we will discuss, we will go to the new chapter called quality control tools. Okay. Yeah, fifth chapter, quality tools. So 7 quality control tools are very popular in quality management. Sometimes you will find 8 quality control tools, and sometimes you will find little bit variation or little bit difference about different 7 quality control tools, because instead of these 7 particular 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, this particular 7 quality control tools, some other type of tools are also introduced. Okay, so let's take a look at the different 7 quality control tools. So one is Pareto diagram to identify it. This is in brief. Okay, Pareto diagram. Pareto chart is like this. This is the Pareto chart to identify the current status and issues. Then the stratification, it basic processing performed when collecting data. Then scattered diagram to identify the relationship between two things. This is to scattered diagram. Cause and effect diagram to identify the cause and effect relationship, to see the to identify the cause and effect relationship. This is this one. So which is also known as the Ishikawa's fishbone diagram. Then histogram to see the distribution of the data. This is histogram. A check sheet to record data collection. This is the check sheet. And control chart or graph to find out abnormalities and identify the current status. This is the control chart example. Okay, so and stratification, it is here actually it is meant by process flow diagram, basic processing performed when collecting data. This is just the process sequences or the process flow. So flow charts, so let's look at in more details. So flowchart means used to document the detailed step in a process, often the first step in process re-engineering. So this is the example of process at departure gate. Okay, for an airport. So this is the flowchart. Okay. Now the checklist, a simple data check-off sheet designed to identify type of quality problems at each workstation per shift, per machine, per operator. So suppose different types of defect types you can see: broken zipper, ripped material, missing buttons, faded color. Okay, so in case of a cloth, and whenever you find a defect, you give a tick mark in the checklist, and you can understand that how many defects you have found. Okay, so you can see that broken zipper, there is a total of 3 defects. For ripped material, there are 7 defects. Missing buttons 3, faded color 2. So like this. Now histogram. Okay, a chart that shows the frequency distribution of observed values of a variable like service time at a bank drive up window to display whether the distribution is symmetrical or the skewed. So in case of histograms, the outcomes are actually represented along x-axis, and along y-axis the frequency density, actually frequency density is, it is actually plotted. Okay, not just frequency, it is frequency density in case of uh, histograms. Okay, because histogram is applied basically for continuous data. Okay, suppose you are measuring the heights of the students. So regarding the heights, suppose from 170 to 173, from 174 to 178, from 178 to 180. So in this way uh, you can create some particular parts like A, B, C, D, E. Okay, you can create different types of outcomes which will be expressed in terms of ranges. So this is a continuous variable, you can understand. So that's why here in case of histograms you will not find any uh, uh, gap between these bars. Okay, these bar, you will not find any gap between these bars, and not necessarily that all these bars will have same width. It's not necessarily. Okay, So for example, suppose if you here, suppose if you consider 170 to 175, and here if you consider 175 to 178, so it will be 5 and it will be 3. Okay, so that you can very easily that you can do, because along y-axis you are basically considering the frequency distribution, and the frequency is actually expressed by the area of the particular bar. Okay, so this is the thing that histograms you are actually, you can see here. Now, Pareto analysis. This is a very important technique, a technique that displays the degree of importance for each element, named after 19th century Italian economist, often called the 80-20 rule. Principle is that quality problems are the results of only a few problems. Example, 80% of the problems caused by 20% of the causes. Okay, so it has been seen in practice that most of the quality oriented problems, the problems that you face, 80% of the problems caused by actually 20% of the causes. So let's take a look at an example. The idea will be clear. Suppose we are considering uh, casting defects, Pareto chart for titanium investment casting defects. So along x-axis, you can see that different types of casting defects are expressed. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so shrink, porosity, weld LOF, shell inclusion, hard alpha inclusion, tungsten inclusion. So these are all the you know, these are all kind of the casting defects along x-axis. These defects have been represented. Okay, now you can see that regarding shrink, it accounts for almost more than 60%, almost 70 or 65 to 70%. uh, it is caused by of the total problems is caused by the shrink. And if you consider also the porosity, then you will consider this point. Why this point? Because this plus this, so the cumulative value means this plus this. Then if you consider this, then you will consider this point, this plus this plus this. So this is the cumulative value, and so on. So you can see that 1 and 2, here you can see that 80% of the defects are due to 33.33% of all the factors, because here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 2 out of 6, that means 33.33%. Okay, so 80% of the defects are due to 33.33% of all the factors. So which is depicting you the Pareto analysis, depicted by Pareto analysis. Now you can say that Pareto analysis is about 80-20 rule. So it is not happening here that 80% of the defects are not due to the 20% of the all the factors, but here 33.33%. So how the Pareto analysis, so why Pareto analysis it is telling about 80-20? Because in most of the cases it is found in practice that it is 80-20. That means 80% of the problems are caused by 20% of the all defect related factors. Okay, but it may not be exactly 20. It is roughly speaking it is 80-20, but it may not be exactly 20. It may be 25%, or it may be also 18%. So it may not be exactly 80-20, but actually in general speaking, that most of the quality related problems actually occur because of only few causes. So that is actually what was meant by Pareto. Then you can have a look at the cause and effect diagram. This is also called fishbone diagram, or Ishikawa's fishbone diagram. Fishbone diagram, why fishbone diagram? Because it looks like, this diagram looks like a fishbone. Okay, So you can see that quality related problems, if you not only quality related problems, basically what for it is actually said that whatever problems you face, the problems are some because of some causes. And if you analyze the causes, there are some uh, uh, some more or earlier causes are there because of those causes. So those causes are also you will find those causes are also the effect of uh, because of some root causes. Okay, so here the same thing is done here. If through this diagram it is actually analyzed, you can see that this is the problem or the effect that you are getting. So you are getting here many type of causes. Okay, some are related, maybe related to machines, some may be related to workers, some may be related to suppliers, some may be related to temperature or process or materials. Okay, a lot of causes you are finding because of this effect. And these causes also have some other root causes. Okay, for example, for this cause there are some other you can see other root causes are there, and these causes can also have some other root causes. So in this way it is actually observed through Ishikawa's, why Ishikawa's fishbone diagram or cause and effect diagram is used. It is basically identified that what are actually the causes behind the effect or the problem, and among those causes uh, what are the root causes of those causes, and also it is observed that what are the critical root causes. Okay, in order to and the nature of, in order to understand the nature of the causes also it is used, because you will able to understand that whether the critical cause is related to machine or related to worker or related to supplier or related to the process or material or temperature or pressure, like that. Then scatter diagram, a graph chart that shows how two variables are related to one another. So that is actually data can be used in a regression analysis to establish equation for the relationship. So this is a regression equation is actually established by this. Here actually through the scatter plot you can suppose for example you are you have some particular demands for some period of time. Now if you along the x-axis if you represent time and along y-axis if you represent the demands, then you can understand that for which particular period how what kind of demands you have. Okay, and you can also able to understand that the trend. Okay, the trend you can understand that what is that whether there is any trend at all, and if a trend exists in data, what kind of trend exists, whether it is increasing trend or whether it is decreasing trend, what kind of thing is happening. So that you can very easily understand from scatter diagram, which is also very frequently used by the quality practitioners. Now the control chart. Okay, this is actually huge topic. Okay, so control chart, it is important tool used in statistical process control. The UCL and LCL, upper control limit and LCL, are calculated limits used to show when processes is in or out of control. Okay, you will see that I have made one particular video regarding the CAT 1 evaluation, and there I have mentioned about what is specification limits or control limits. Those things I have given in detail, but we can also discuss it here in more detail. So a control chart is an important aid of statistical device used for the study of control of the repetitive process. And control chart was developed by Dr. W. A. Shewhart. That's why it is also termed as a Shewhart chart. And it is the basic charts, obviously. And it is based upon the fact that variability does exist in all the repetitive processes. Control charts allows a company's performance over time to be analyzed by combining performance data, average, range, and standard deviation. Control charts usually used to analyze a process the company performs. The control charts are basically two types. So control charts for variables, for example, X bar and R chart, usually for quality characteristics that can be measured and expressed in numbers, and control chart for attributes, example NP chart, P chart, C chart, and U chart, used for quality characteristics that can be measured uh, uh, dichotomously. That means go or no go type, or conforming or non-conforming type, like that. Okay, and you can see some examples of the control chart here. Okay, so uh, here you can see that there is a target value. This is UWL, means upper warning limit, lower warning limit, upper control limit, lower control limit, upper specification limit, lower specification limit, like that. Okay, so I will discuss these things in more details. Actually, whenever I will discuss this thing in more detail in the next class, because today I cannot complete it, because the time is from 9:40 to 9:50 to 10:40. Okay, so I can start it because it is up to 10:40. Okay, so what is happening there? Uh, in case of control chart, why the concept of control chart has been introduced? First, you need to understand this. Okay, whenever you manufacture a particular product, this is also applicable to service industries as well, but here in this case I am giving the examples of manufacturing industries and the product based industries, so that it becomes easier for you to understand. Okay, uh, in case of whenever you are going to produce any product, obviously there will be some variation. Okay, suppose you are going to produce a shaft. So uh, regarding the diameter of the shaft, if you want to control the diameter of the shaft all time, suppose your target value is, suppose you want to produce a 10 mm uh, diameter of shaft. Okay, so now always you cannot produce exactly the 10 mm. There will be always some variation. It can be suppose 10.01 mm, it can be 10.0502 mm, it can be even 9.59 mm, so like that. Okay, so obviously there will be some variation, and the customer is also aware about the fact that there is some natural variation. Okay, that's why the producer or the manufacturer is not able to produce exactly the target value. That kind of accuracy it can never have. Okay, so that's why the customer also gives some tolerance limit, which is actually mentioned by, which is said, which is termed as the specification limits. It may be upper specification limit, it may be lower specification limit. Now, in case of diameter, when you are considering, when your variable is the diameter of the shaft, usually uh, the upper specification limit and lower specification limits both are provided. Okay. Suppose the diameter, you will find that 10 plus minus 0.03 mm. So you can understand that it can be 9 point up to 9, from 9.97 to 10.03. This will be the range. Okay, this will be the tolerance limit. But in some cases there can be only the upper specification limit, or only there can be the lower specification limit. Okay, suppose for example the food products. Okay, there must be there will not be any upper specification limit by the customers, because if you give more amount of foods, there is no problem, but if you give less amount of food, then there will be a problem. So there will be obviously some lower specification limit. But regarding, suppose for example, in case of greenhouse gas emission, there will be some upper specification limit, because if you go beyond that limit, that will be a problem. But if you go there is no meaning of giving a lower specification limit, because if your pollution is less or greenhouse gas emission is less, that cannot be treated as a problem. So in some cases you will have both specification limits, upper specification limit and lower specification limits, USL and LSL. And in some cases you will have only USL, or in some cases you will have only LSL, USL or LSL. Okay, so these things are there. And keep in mind that specification limits are provided by the customers. Specification limits are not control limits. Control limits are provided, or control limits are determined by the process itself, but control limits are not given by the customer. So this is the difference between the specification limit and the control limit. So what happens now, usually, suppose you can understand in this particular graph, these suppose along x-axis you are representing the sample numbers. Okay, this is, there are 8 samples. Suppose the variable is diameter of the shaft. Okay, and 8 shafts suppose you have manufactured, and you have been given this upper specification limit and lower specification limit by the customer. Okay, now you need to, why you need to have the control limits. Actually, if something, if you find some data point beyond this specification limit, that will be treated as a defect, and that will be actually rejected by the customer. Okay, but if you but be, you need to control your process in such a way so that you can earlier, you can understand about your process, and you can take preventive action against it. Okay, suppose if you feel that if some point goes beyond the specification limit, then only I will take care of it, then it is not a correct idea, or it is not a good idea. Why? Because then what will happen, many data points you will get which will be beyond the specification limits, which means defect. So, and you also need to understand that there are basically there are two causes behind variation. One is natural variation, and another is uh, variation due to assignable causes. That means, suppose it is not a random variation, it is there are some causes behind it. Maybe the worker is performing the task not properly, maybe the due to wear and tear of the machine, or suppose the machine has become old, and that's why it cannot deliver its tasks properly. So these are all known as the assignable causes behind it. Okay, so usually it is thought that if your data points are within the control limits, that means it comes under natural variation. Okay, and if your data points go beyond the control limit, that means your may- that means that indicates that it is not because of the natural variation. There will be some particular causes behind it, and that's why the deviation is so much. Because you can see, you can understand that within the control limit the deviation is less from the target value, but beyond the control limit the deviation is more. Okay, so this is so if something goes beyond the control limit, so you will look for that why this is happening, what is the assignable cause. So you will try to find out, and you will take the preventive action, and you will try to control your process so that you do not get the data points beyond the control limits, and ultimately that will help you to meet the specification limits as provided by the customers. Okay, but if you, so it is, this is an early action, and much earlier action also you can take, which is and usually upper control limit and lower control limit are set by plus minus 3 sigma limit. It has been seen in practice. Why this is, that I will tell you later. Now, in case of the warning limit, if you take more preventive action, then also I mean uh, even before control limit, you give an warning limit for upper warning, which is termed as upper warning limit, and in case of the lower domain, you can term it as a lower warning limit. That means if and usually this upper warning limit and lower warning limit is determined or given by the target value plus minus 2 standard deviation. So that means if your data points are beyond this warning limit, you try to figure out that why this is happening, or whether there is some assignable causes behind it. Okay, so and if your data points are within the control limit, you say that your process exhibits the process control, or your process is under control. And if your data points, if you get some of your data points are beyond the control limit, that then you say that your process is not under control. Okay, but also you should keep in mind there can be also some error. In some cases you can have a false positive, which is known as type 1 error, and in some cases you can have also false negative, which is known as type 2 error. Okay, so type 1 error, what is type 1 error or false positive? That means suppose you have got some data points beyond the control limit. Okay, it may happen that you have got something beyond the control limit, so you will look for some assignable causes behind it. Okay, but actually uh, it is not happening. Okay, suppose your data point you have found outside the control limits due to natural variation, but not for assignable causes. Okay, I have said previously that if you get some data beyond the control limit, that means the probability is more that it is happening because of the assignable causes, not due to the natural variation. But it may so happen in case of type 1 error that it is happening by chance. Okay, it is happening by chance, and it is because of the natural variation, it is not because of the assignable causes. So this is known as type 2 error, sorry, type 1 error. And what is type 2 error? Type 2 error means, suppose you may find something, that suppose your data points are within the control limits, and you are you will think that my data points is with data points are within control limits, so there must not be any assignable causes behind it. Okay, but actually there are some assignable causes behind it. Okay, but you are getting a false negative. That means a false negative means you are thinking that this is not a defect, but this is actually a defect, because this is happening your uh, because of your assignable causes. Okay, So that's why this is known as type 2 error, which is false negative. Okay. Now you can ask that why these things actually happen, because these things may happen because you are actually whatever data you are observing, that is actually basically these are the samples. These are not about population. Okay, so you have no idea about the population at the population level. So these kinds of things do happen. And another thing you must notice that though usually the control limits are provided by plus minus 3 sigma limit, okay, but it's not always, it is not mandatory that in all the cases you will have always plus minus 3 sigma limit. It may have you can also have plus minus 4 sigma limit. In some cases you can have also plus minus 2 sigma limit or 2.5 sigma limit. So it depends upon your particular process. Okay, the experience of process is required for this, that how to determine the control limits. But usually speaking, or mostly, the plus minus 3 sigma limits are preferred, because it has been observed that the plus minus 3 sigma limit mostly it gives uh, uh, the best optimal level or the best balance between type 1 error and type 2 error. So in practice, in majority of the cases, plus minus 3 sigma limits are actually selected. So now I'm going to stop the recording.